Mate, a shacket, mate. A shacket is the a shacket
Seen
is the
that.
thing. A
I've
shacket is
seen.
the thing. One of my coaches messaged me today, and like, mate, I've got an event on the weekend, and normally I would wear a shirt and go really formal, but mate, I'm gonna rock the shacket. I'm gonna rock. Mate, it's performance enhancing. It is literally performance
100%.
enhancing.
100%. Just get like an extra medium and you look kind of like.
Mate, you know, extra medium, and
That's
you're
the goal.
absolutely flying.
Let's get started. This one, I'm quite looking forward to it.
Oh, have
Yeah,
we not
Ted.
already start? Have we not already started?
Oh, we started. Let's start. Today we've got a guest today, a man who needs no further introduction. Is the man himself, Joe Parish. Welcome to the show. How are
Dude,
you?
an absolute pleasure to be back on and connecting with you and reminiscing on your growth, your progress. And I think the beautiful thing is when you haven't caught up with somebody for a little while and then you reconnect and you check back in and then you just see the growth, the evolution, the changes that they've been through, the work that they've been doing, both internally and externally. And mate, it's fantastic and yeah, amazing to witness.
Likewise, it's an honor. I appreciate it. So to kind of begin things off with the podcast show, what's happening in Joel's world? What's keeping you out? What are you aligning things towards? And what's the vision you're looking to create since we last spoke?
I think the biggest question that I've been living in for the last little while, and this was something that I found in a journal, which was literally here, and I've written it down, and it's from 2021. And I was basically clearing out a house, and I was looking back through like all of the journals and all the notebooks that I basically have because I don't know about anybody else, but I never throw them away. I just put them somewhere and then just leave them because I feel like it's a bit weird as well if people to read like my
Someone reads that.
scribblings of like I feel terrible today, like well the world's going to end and I'm not happy, whatever. Um, and one thing that I wrote was, which I thought was really, really interesting because it didn't necessarily hit me at the time, but so often things are there to plant seeds
Mm.
and not give you answers or change your mind. And that was the question of how do I want to live instead of how do I achieve more? And for me, actually, over the last kind of few weeks and like last little while, like that's been really something that's been kind of standing out to me in terms of I've always had this need for uh, progress and growth and significance and a degree of validation and wanting to push and wanting to progress and wanting to be successful in all the different domains that I try to explore. And there's always this natural tendency of like, how do I achieve more? 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 And that can quite often drive, obviously, so many of our decisions and our behavior and the actions that we then take. And that question literally hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, actually, Joe, how do you want to live? And what is it you're optimizing for? Because we've recently just moved to Portugal and I kind of reset and sat and wrote like, yeah, what am I currently optimizing for and how do I want to live? And what does that now look like? And there wasn't an end destination. It wasn't like, I want to get this. It was, who do I need to be? How do I want to behave? And what are the actions that I now know that I need to take in alignment with those things, most importantly, in the life that I'm now looking to create, not just in the future, but also in the today. And that for me has probably like really kind of like realigned me in terms of like what's really important. And I'd set a big goal this year of wanting to do the Great Euro Try, which is basically cycle the length of the country, swim the channel, then run to Paris. And that how do I want to live? It's like at the moment, business is a real priority, a real focus. We're going through a huge ascension phase of just change and developments and improvements. And that's like our clients and our team are absolutely everything. Number two, my health and my energy is absolutely integral to me. And then number three, it's actually my relationship, the connections and the experiences that I want to have. And I'm like, right now, do I want to be training 20, 30 hours a week? And in the time that I do have available, do I now want to be giving up like all of that stuff instead of being able to go and walk the dog with Leanne, cycle the bike to a coffee shop, sit and have some brunch, then go and do a training session, then maybe sit and read or go and do something fun or go to a different place that we wouldn't usually? Or do I want to spend 6 hours swimming? And like that for me has gone back to the question piece, giving me so much more alignment in terms of what am I okay with saying no to and what am I okay with being like, this is what I said that I was going to do. But actually, I'm okay with not doing what I said that I was going to do because my values and what's important to me has now shifted. And I'm
Mm.
okay with that. And being at peace with that and being able to let go of that and being able to surrender to that, I think has been one of the biggest things that's probably changed for me in terms of what's important and what is it that I'm optimizing for.
How recent was that shift? Out of curiosity.
I think it's probably been more noticeable in the last 4 weeks, mainly because of the relocation and then the importance of actually what do we now want to do? And that's I say this all the time. Literally, we wake, we walk the dog, we train, we work, we eat. And that's our structure. And for me and Leanne, that works beautifully. And we obviously have the other pieces that we do on a weekend and stuff like that. But it's the simple things that we find the greatest amount of joy. And then I'm like, that for me is what it's about. And do I now want to lose that because of the additional pressure and load that I'm now putting on myself to do this additional thing? Or do I actually now want to be able to ground myself in what requires my attention, what requires my effort, and what requires my energy? So definitely the last 4 weeks that's changed. Prior to that, it obviously had been far more noticeable. I think you always know what to do, but sometimes it's a case of you almost don't listen to your wisdom that's coming through. And I think like your wisdom, like it's Jack Pransky on like Somebody Should Have Told Us. He says like your wisdom is always there. It's always in the background. It's always telling you. It's that little voice, that little thing that's quiet and you can't quite hear it. And you only really hear it in the space and the time that you give yourself because normally you're preoccupied and then you're just basically being driven into with all these other kind of sensory inputs. And so I think in my mind and in my soul, I knew that this was a shift and a change that Joe Parish now needed in terms of realigning and getting clear over what was important and what needed my energy and what needed my focus and how I wanted to live. But I think it took me a while to get to that point of being ready to accept that to myself.
Yeah, that's a it's a powerful shift, right? Because I think that kind of happens to a lot of people in smaller like blips as well, where it's like you got all these goals you want to achieve, none of them are meaningful, and there's one thing you actually want to do, but you kind of like almost don't want to admit that's the one you want to do, and you want to almost like don't necessarily say park the bus here, but it's like you kind of want to choose things that are meaningful because it's kind of like sometimes when and you can relate this to fitness as well, where someone would diet, even though it's not a goal, just kind of give them an outlet to show that they're progressing in life, whereby what they need is to focus on the thing that's going to push them over even further here in terms of business. So for you, like, how do you, because I'd love to hear this from a selfish reason as well, but like, how do you choose goals and refine goals that are actually meaningful compared to the ones that aren't?
I think you've always got to reverse engineer that goal and go, right, okay, like what's it going to take? What am I willing to compromise? What am I willing to sacrifice? What am I not?
Mm, mm,
And ultimately, is that a process that I'm happy and a journey that I'm happy to go on? Because I think sometimes, again, I'll look at it through like a business perspective. Like we speak to coaches that obviously now want to have a goal of being able to reach X. And it's like, okay, cool. You can absolutely do that.
yeah.
But right now, are you willing and okay with compromising and sacrificing A, B, and C in order for you to now be able to get there? You know? And sometimes you'll be like, but like me with the training side, I was like, yeah, I am. And then you start doing it, and then you realize, actually, do you know what? Some lessons need to be experienced in order for them to be understood. And this is what I thought that I wanted. But actually, in hindsight, this isn't what I wanted. It's just what I thought. And actually, that's a really powerful thing because you've got to go through that experience, I believe, to get clarity. Because if you don't, then you're always sat in this what if mentality and you never make a decision. So I think the goal is always reverse engineered around like, am I okay with the process and am I okay with the behaviors and the actions and what it's now going to take in order for me to now be to get there? And if the answer is yes, then you go on that pursuit. If the answer is no, then it's like, okay, how do I now reconnect? And why do I now want this goal? And somebody said a great thing to me yesterday, one of our coaches. And she said, I asked myself the question the other day of if I didn't have Instagram and social media, would I still be striving and working towards the same goals that I am currently, or would it be different? I thought it was a really cool question because
Mm,
it allows you to actually then get clear over, okay, if you turn the cameras off and you basically remove yourself from that external validation and everything else that obviously comes along with the documentation, obviously, of that journey and that process and the progress, it's like, is this still what I would do, or would I behave in an alternative way? And actually, would my goal shift? And I think there's no right or wrong with that, but I think it does give you obviously a different perspective to be able to look through. And I think that's all this is. It's never about a right or a wrong or a good or a bad or a you should do this or that. I think it's just looking at how can I now look at this through a different lens? How can I offer a different insight? How can I offer a different perspective to my thinking? Because our thinking is our life. And we look at life through a certain lens. So people will be listening to this podcast and they'll be picking up on certain pieces. And everybody else, in your mind, you're like, everybody else has also just heard exactly what I've heard.
They haven't. Yeah.
But they haven't. They've heard something completely different. And so that's exactly the same with like you're like, you're looking at the world through this, like through this window, and you can now see the trees and the birds and the whatever else. The person next to you now sees, you know, the rubbish. They see the graffiti, and they see, you know, whatever the grass needs cutting, and that's their perspective of it. And you'll see this actually within like even me and Leanne. It's like Leanne will get really irritated about stuff like I stack the dishwasher in a terrible way. I don't even notice it. I'm literally like, I'll put stuff in the I'm doing a good thing. I'm putting something in the dishwasher. And she's like, Joe, can you not see what you've done here with how you stack this dishwasher? I'm like, oh, what's wrong with it? Like, it's not on the kit. It's, you know, it's not on the worktop. She's like, I'm now gonna have to completely reorder this entire dishwasher. And I'm like, it works and it's fine. It goes in. Whereas, and then there's other pieces exactly the same where I'm like, can you not see? And she's like, no, what? You know? So, and so it's like, even those little things that you can think about, even like in a relationship where you just have different perspectives and worldviews that they see that you don't see, and obviously vice versa. And I think that's a great thing. So yeah, gone back to it. I think it's to close that loop. It's the perspective shifts, offering a different thought process and being able to obviously sit within it, ask yourself the questions, and then going and fucking about and finding out, and then actually allowing yourself to experience and understand, like, is this what I want to want? Or actually, is it what I thought that I wanted? But actually, I need to have then the confidence and the courage to be able to course correct and now let go and go a different way and be okay with that.
So, yeah, it's funny how you said that about like the way kind of other people perceive things in a different way, and it's like a mental software you have. It comes in, it gets processed, it comes out a different way, and the outcome's always different to someone else's. I think I've been looking into a lot of like neurodiversity a little bit, like how there's a lot on social media about ADHD, like people are thinking differently and like performing differently from a mental performance standpoint. What's your thoughts on the landscape of that? Because I think when people label it, I think they're labeling it as the wrong thing, as like, is ADHD, or is there's something different, or there's something off. And the concept itself, I guess it's meaningful, but there's not much research on it. But like the whole concept of like people thinking differently, and I think a lot of people view it as like, this is the view that they have in the world and this is how it should be, but then open up to other things. I'm always quite curious with how like other people see things, because it kind of allows you to explore things like, is what I believe to be true actually isn't true in a sense, and it kind of gets you second thinking. But similarly, you could also get trapped into always thinking that what you think is always wrong, and there's another thing on top of that. I think you have to back yourself with it. But what's your thoughts on that, the whole climate of like neurodiversity? Like, I think a lot of people kind of speaking about ADHD, like the whole landscape of that. What's your 2 cents?
Number one, I'm not an expert in any way, shape, or form. So I think obviously all that I can do is obviously give you my thought process and how I would kind of compartmentalize that question. And what I would now look at and consider is number one, I think the awareness obviously around obviously that landscape, I think, is absolutely improving, developing, and there's some incredible people doing some amazing work. And I think that's what it comes back down to. It's just then looking at, right, okay, how do I now get the very best out of myself? And how does that, and what do I now need to do? And what do I now need to have in place in order for me to now be able to allow myself the platform to be able to progress? And I think for me, when I look at it through that lens, it's just about, okay, everybody obviously now will have different ways in which they now function, perform, and operate and focus. And it's then just starting to understand oneself and then looking at, right, okay, well, ultimately, what are the things that are now working for me? What are the things that aren't working for me? And then how do I now create my own process? How do I create my own methodology of how I now want to do things based upon what I've experienced, what I've been through, what I've now lived, what I've now learned from others? And then how can I now build a system that I now know is going to allow me to get the very best out of myself, whilst then obviously at the same time being able to have the right people around you, and I suppose the space to then be able to actually reflect and ask myself, like, what am I not seeing? Or could I now look at this through a different lens? How could somebody see this differently right now? And one of my favorite quotes or analogies, like, you can't read the label when you're inside the bottle. And so often when you're in it and there's emotion, and there's emotion that's caught up in it as well. It's like, think about it like this. If you have a client or a friend that comes to you that says, Tarzan, I'm really struggling with A, B, C, and D. You can go, Joe, not a problem, mate.
Do this, do
Bang,
this.
bang, 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 bang. And you can see all the things that I now need to do. Me, I'm like, oh my God, I feel like Buckaroo. I'm carrying around all this load. I cannot think, I cannot see. And all I now can see is this one perspective and this one lens that I'm currently looking through. So I think there's the, how do I now allow myself the opportunity to get the best out of myself? What's obviously the kind of the operating manual that's going to allow me the chance to be able to perform, to be able to bring my best self to the party. And that's going to require you to find and just, again, experiment, I think is going to be key. The second thing is, how do I now allow myself the space to ask myself some better quality questions and just challenge my own thought process and how I'm currently thinking and how I'm currently seeing things by what am I not currently seeing? And I think number three, have you then got the right people around you that you inherently trust and that you value, that you can now lean into, that have a different worldview than you know, see things differently, which can actually challenge you in a really positive way, because it almost can then be like the zig to your zag. And I think that's the way in which I would see how best to optimize to get the very best out of oneself, regardless of the way in which you now like to learn, process, think, perform, etc.
It's a really kind of like interesting landscape when it comes to that side of things in terms of worldviews. And I believe you had a big role in terms of this when you kind of position in a way when I used to work with you as like questions are answers and the answers are based on the questions you ask. So I think Tony Robbins already has like a framework which I think is worth checking out for everyone on how to ask better quality questions to get better quality responses, to get better quality outcomes. And it's like the quality of your life is actually dictated by the quality of questions you ask for yourself and also the world. And I heard that, I think it was in 2019, I believe. And I was like, don't know what that means. And 5 years later, I'm like, oh, I get it now. And it's you kind of connect the dots later on. And it's almost like something you learned back in the past about that transfer over to the future. I think a lot of times that the way I was kind of like even thinking of it recently, because that's something that I'm seeing a lot of about like focus, losing focus, twiddling their thumbs, and like not showing how things work from a brain capacity standpoint. It's I've been really looking into that briefly because I'm always interested in terms of how to influence change. And I think a lot of change really comes back to like the identity you set yourself. Because like for example, if you say you are someone that can't focus, well, you're gonna live up to that. If you say you're someone that kind of like can't stick to something, well, the guarantee is you're not gonna stick to something because you are the person that does that eventually, right? So for someone that's on the verge of like changing identity and they have like little labels they put on themselves, whether they know it or they don't know it, what would be your advice to them?
I'll go back one step. I think actually the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your thinking, and then the quality of your thinking determines the quality of the questions that you now ask yourself.
I like that.
I think that if you go back a step, because actually it's then, again, your thinking
Living
is
a life.
life, and then it's understanding, but okay, actually, do you know what? The number one way to be able to now blow somebody's mind is for you then to be able to give them their full attention so that they can actually now think. And often Jen basically says, you know, the brain that holds the problem also contains the solution to the problem. And it's just actually sometimes we just need the space to now be able to kind of process. And there's a great book, which is called More Time to Think. And within that book, basically they communicate, it's Nancy Klein, if I remember correctly, basically talks about like the number one way to blow somebody's mind is for them to obviously give them your full attention. And the second piece that I really, really liked is like, how can you allow somebody to use as much of their own thinking in their own brain before they require yours? So instead of you then going and go, I think this, or I think that, or I think this, like, how can you actually allow them to actually have the space to be able to then process? And I thought that was really nice because it does actually allow you to realize how many coaching sessions you've been in. And all you do is you just hold space for somebody and you don't say anything. And then like, I had it yesterday, like, I realize I'm answering my own question right now. And I'm like, perfect. Like it's there, but you just, the wisdom was there. You just hadn't allowed yourself to be able to kind of like process that. Going into what you've communicated, I think the only thing that really matters is your behavior and the actions that you now take. The only thing that matters are the actions that you, are the ground that you really stand upon, you know? So confidence needs evidence. So of course, right now, whenever you're trying to like make a change, change is hard, change is uncomfortable, change, nobody likes change. As much as we think change is a good thing, which it is, it can be incredibly positive, it's sticky, it's hard, it feels uncertain, more uncertain. It can bring around obviously a lot of instability. And obviously through that process can be, yeah, very, very challenging. And I think within those moments, it's then looking at, right, okay, how do I now ensure that I have certainty in other areas? And that might be other people that actually can provide you with that kind of stability. And then I think all that matters is, who do I need to be? How do I need to behave? What are the actions that I need to take in order for me to be able to get to where I want to go? And right now, of course, I'm not going to like believe X, Y, and Z because I have absolutely no evidence that backs that up. But all that now really matters is, right, okay, yeah, what's my next step? And that is the very thing that will then allow you the chance to be able to build the belief. And another great thing that I heard a while ago that I think really rings true, and I've seen this crop up a few times in my life, and I'd love to get your perspective, is like your identity lags your reality. So like for example, it's like I remember the first ever time that I bought myself a quote unquote nice car. And for about 6 months, I didn't feel like it was my car. I didn't feel like I owned it. I didn't feel like I deserved it. I didn't think I was like worthy of it. And I just felt as though like it just wasn't a thing. And then I don't remember the day or the time. And I was like, me. Yeah, that's what I do, you know? And I was like, okay, that's this is now me. And that for me is like how I see that like identity, like my reality. Like it was almost like it just took me a period of time to almost like catch up to the thing. And I had to sit within it for a period of time for me to be able to normalize that, because for such a period of time, like that was so completely new to me that my nervous system was like, "Oh, this feels completely novel." And so that's how I would see that. And that arises with coaches now charging maybe more money than what they had done previously, or working with more clients or whatever. I just think initially you're like, "Whoa, rabbit in the headlights," but that's normal. You need to have that exposure, because it's that exposure that then actually allows you the chance to be able to step into it and then normalize it. And that creates a new platform.
There's something interesting you mentioned there about like, the nervous system side of things, because I'm sure you're familiar with Dr. Gabriel Lyons.
Mm-hmm.
So it was one of her talks, and I remember like how like I was speaking about the nervous system, how there's most people know about fight or flight, which is like if there's danger, you run away, you fight it. There's rest and digest, which is like a place of like parasympathetic, and there's also like hundreds of different modes you get into. The one that really stuck out for me is like the tend and befriend. It's like you see a danger, you befriend it, it becomes normalized in a sense. Like you get yourself to an environment where you're like, let's say it's an analogy I like to use is people making friends with lions, for example. It's like you tend to befriend it, it becomes normal, and it's like yes, there's danger, but you kind of normalize it in a sense. And I think that's like a trend I've seen, and I've also seen it within myself, so that's why I'm able to see in others. But you can almost look at, right, this is non-serving, I'm going to tend to befriend it. It's just that it's just normal, and I get very comfortable with the fact it's not where I want it to be, which is really interesting perspective. But I think for you, you speak a lot about people and how much of an influence they have in your life. Like, how did you actually find your people? Because I think there was a period in my life, it was 20, it was a long period of my life, probably like 2016 to 2021 or 2022, where I was like, I didn't know anyone that I wanted in my life. It was almost out of necessity. And I was like, I just need to find my people. And it was almost for me, like the advice I got given is like, you don't find them, they find you. And I was like, yeah, that's good advice, but how do I find them quick? Because I need some I can bounce off. But for someone there that's kind of in a path where they want to pursue growth and they want better people around them and they don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, for you, how did you find your people, and what would be your advice in that scenario for that person that's listening to this and wants to find the answer to their questions?
I think number one, it's about actually allowing yourself to find yourself. And when I say that, I mean, allow yourself to accept yourself for where you are, who you are, your strengths, your weaknesses, your vulnerabilities, your flaws, and actually just now be open. Because in order for you to be able to find your people, yeah, you have to now be able to first and find like oneself. Otherwise, you'll end up doing what I did for years. And that's basically pretend to be somebody that I wasn't, because that's who I thought that I needed to be. That's how I thought I needed to behave. That's how I perceived people would want me to kind of like communicate the actions that I was taking and the things that I was really kind of embodying, when in fact it was just a mask and it was just a protective mechanism that was just keeping me safe. And then what ends up happening is that I became like a puppet, whereby I was then to pretend to be somebody that I wasn't to try and then please people. Or that was then obviously attracting not the wrong people into my world, but it wasn't really allowing me the opportunity to really build that level of connection that I now knew that I wanted to, because, well, they weren't actually really ever experiencing or getting to know the real Joe. And so I think for me, that was obviously a big barrier for so long. And I think one of the biggest changes for me was just, yeah, almost like that kind of like degree of like self-acceptance, and then understanding, well, what are my values? You know, what are my interests? What is it that I like? What is it that I stand for? What is it I don't stand for? And then starting to look at it through that lens, and then looking at, right, okay, who else then is around me, or that I now see, watch, or follow, that has very, very similar values
Mm-hmm.
and hold very, very similar kind of like interests or views around how they want to live, how they want to do things, etc. And I think that's the biggest thing. But in order for you to be able to find that, you need to be able to understand what that now looks like for you, and then be okay with that, and realize that people need you exactly as you are, which took me for a long time to be able to be okay with. And when you do that, gone back to what you said, it's like, yes, they absolutely will find you, because then you're opening yourself up. When you open yourself up, I believe that you then actually will then be more recipient to attracting more of the right types of people into your world. But I think it also then gives you a new worldview, in terms of you're then seeing the things that are showing up in your world then in other people's, that you then go, I resonate with that, I relate to that, that's me. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking, that's exactly what I'm hearing. Or that person's living in alignment with my values and how I would want to do things, and I like that, and therefore I'm attracted to that. So how can I now become more connected to that person through network, mutual relationship, or just simply, you know, being able to connect and engage? And relationships take time. And often we try to, especially now, it's like skip so many key processes. But it's like, I didn't meet Leanne and then go, Leanne, should we get married? You know, like there was a long process that we had to go through to be able to get to that point. And I think it's exactly the same in any other relationship. You know, when you first reach out to somebody, you first meet somebody, you don't really know that much about that person. They don't really know much about you. And actually, trust is earned, not given. And so it's a process that you now have to be able to go through. And you can't skip those. You almost can't skip those steps. And so I think for me, it's also then just understanding, like, this is a process that I think you have to go through to find your people, and to develop those bonds and to develop those relationships on a deeper level. Because think about it this way: who do you trust the most in your life? If I think about who I trust the most in my life, it's because I know the most about them and they know the most about me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That doesn't just happen over one coffee or one dinner or joining one network or working with one mentor, like straight away. That's a journey that takes time and constant work. So I don't know whether that gives you an answer.
It's
That's my jumbled way of communicating my thoughts.
It's I love the fact you kind of mentioned, like, because we spoke about this off camera in terms of like relationships, and like how it's like a life rich experience when you find the one, and it's like you find the person that you're gonna spend the rest of your life with, you can say. It's I think a lot of people kind of like almost they it kind of ties into that, I believe, because it's like if you find yourself, you can find the person that you're gonna spend the rest of your life with. And I think to some degree people want to find that person, and it's almost like it's a matter of time, and there's also a matter of like find the right one that's going to fit with you. For you, like, what's your views on like? I want to position this correctly. I was going to say what's your views on relationship. Probably not a good question there, but more so like the whole angle of like having that person you spend your rest of your life with. What have you seen the value add for yourself since finding Yan and having that person around you that supports you and allows you to become your best everywhere?
I think finding obviously a partner that challenges you, that gets the best out of you.
Mm.
But I think more so than anything else, for me, through my worldview, it's having somebody that wants to get the best out of themselves, that is continually exploring how they can, you know, like be the best that they can. And they're not doing it for, yes, there's obviously, of course, always going to be like a, you know, a secondary byproduct of obviously them developing oneself, which obviously enhances me, enhances Lola, enhances the people that are obviously around us. But like you're wanting to grow and you're wanting to develop and you're wanting to be able to improve yourself. And I think like for me, being able to find somebody that obviously is in alignment with you in terms of, yeah, values, how you see the world, can challenge you, you know, that can demand and obviously push and want you to be the best, not for anybody else, but for you. And I said this in a post a little while ago. It's like, nobody pushes me like Leanne pushes me or challenges me. And she doesn't do it she doesn't do it in a like, you know, like a direct or like an aggressive way. But I just now know, like, she's like, I know that you're capable of so much more. I know you're capable of better. It's like, that's good. But I just feel like you've got a little bit more in you. And the way in which she communicates and challenges my own thing, like challenges my thinking, allows me to continue to develop myself. And I think like that's something that I absolutely love. So I think it's being able to find that right blend of like challenge and support. Because obviously if you have too much challenge, well, then there's going to be friction and there's going to be basically conflict. Yeah. Or if you have too much support, I believe, again, there's almost there's comfort. Yeah. And I believe that there's an upside to everything. So I definitely think it's just looking at like, yeah, like what, not even what is this person giving me, because it's not, it's about what am I giving myself? You know, I think that's the most important thing. What am I giving myself, and how am I now turning up, and now how am I showing up in this relationship for me? And then obviously then what impact does that then have as a whole? And then off the back of that, it's like, yeah, how do we see the world? What are our values? What do we now like? What do we enjoy? And for me, being able to have somebody that can accept my weirdness and wonderful thoughts of all these different crazy things that I want to do, and operating in a completely different way, and being pretty obsessive with a lot of things, and just continually wanting to improve, and being able to have somebody that can pull you in and get and also push you and get the best out of you because they're doing that with themselves, I think is, for me anyways, is a beautiful thing. And I think that's the most important thing. And it's about being with somebody that I think you feel safe with, you feel like you belong, and you feel like you can truly be yourself. And I think that's really what it's about, in my opinion, anyway.
I love that. What's your just kind of throw a question on top of that. What's that been the biggest thing you've learned from being with Leanne? Or if it's easier, the most recent thing.
Probably I'm enough as I am. And being able to realize that actually I don't need to be anything like more as in like externally. Is probably just actually allowing myself to be myself and accept myself, and be completely comfortable within that. I think that's probably the biggest thing. She just gives me the platform to be me. And I think that's probably the most powerful thing.
That's quite powerful, to be fair. And for you, Joe, just kind of like wrap up the podcast as well, because I think it's probably somewhere we can almost ramble on for a while. What's one gem that you'd like to share with the audience today that they could take and implement right away?
I think I'll bring it back to the start. Instead of asking yourself, how do I achieve more? Because that's a natural and a normal narrative. And I think we've always got that tendency. Like I'm sat here right now going, how do I achieve more? How do I get better? How do I improve? How do we do this? How do we do that? And it's like, okay, there's positives to that. There's upside to that. But actually ask myself a different question. How do I want to live? And then how do I need to behave? Who do I need to be? And what are the actions that I now know that I need to take in alignment with that? I think that's probably the biggest question. And off the back of that, what am I optimizing for? So for me, I wrote down 4 things. Number 1, fitness, health, energy, vitality. How do I now allow myself to turn up and bring my best and live as long as I can? That's obviously a goal, with quality. Number 2, fulfillment. Am I now fulfilled in the work that I'm currently doing? Am I positively challenged? Am I positively being stretched? And do I feel connected to what it is that I'm working towards in terms of my mission, my vision, and the purpose that I have? That's a huge part of fulfillment for me in the work that I'm currently doing and what I'm trying to bring and add to the world. The next thing is fun. And fun for me isn't this big like, I'm gonna say like water park, like it's not fun like that. It's more like fun is in like finding joy in the morning walk, the cup of coffee that we have every day. Sounds stupid, but we have like ginger cans that we get every day, and we love like just being able to sit for 5 minutes with a cup of coffee and have a ginger can and have like our breakfast is like something that brings me so much joy. Being able to now train, being able to have great conversation, being able to just do those simple things, I think just bring like that's fun and that's joy, that's joyful for me. And then the other thing is freedom. And freedom now isn't like necessarily like being able to do have whatever however people now would determine that. For me, freedom is now being able to have a choice,
Yeah.
and being able to be in a position where it's like, right, okay, I now have a choice in terms of now what I want to do, where I want to spend my time, and where I want to spend my resource, and where I want to spend my energy. And how can I now give myself that choice, and which obviously comes through having a degree of control, which again is a process. So like those four things, I was like, right, okay, if I'm now looking for those four things in my life and in my world, then that's what I'm currently optimizing for. Well, how do I need to behave? What do I need to do? What do I need to say no to? What do I need to say yes to? And that for me has been a great frame to now be to live within, instead of just thinking, well, if I can just get to X, then I'll have freedom. If I can just get to Y, then I'll have freedom. I'll have more fun. And being able to find that in the now and in the simple things, and being able to recognize that that actually is what I want, I think has been a great thing. So that's something that I'd probably say that I'm currently going through and experiencing that has had a positive impact on me.
You've hit the nail on the head. I think the biggest take home for me from there was like the alignment piece, what you say no to, and where you're going to spend your time and your energy and your thought process, where it's not actually misaligned. And I think that itself is like the $1 million question, because once you can answer that, and that's going to change, I guess, all the time as well. Your values change and the shift. And I think knowing where you currently are and realize it's not where you previously were and the place you're operating from is powerful. I know I said that was the last question, but I've got a $1 million question answer here in terms of a question to ask you to kind of wrap it all up. I was like having a bit of fun with this. So let's kind of pick the scenario. You're on a plane, you're going for an 8 hour flight journey, you're going to the best place, Hawaii, for example. You've got two seats on your left. You can choose who you want there. It can't be the friends, family members, people that you know in proximity. You've got one album you can listen to, and you've got one book you can read. So who are you sitting next to, what you listen to, what you're reading? Let's kick it off.
What am I listening to would probably be, if I was just to pick one thing, Ed Sheeran brings me a lot of joy. I feel good. It brings back a lot of
True, true.
great memories around like kind of like my kind of like, yeah, like teenage years and stuff like that. So I get a lot of I have a lot of like positive memories that are associated obviously with his music. So I think that probably would obviously kind of really ground me. The book that I would read. The book that I would read. What's the most powerful book that I've ever read? I really like The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson, because that I think has defined so much of like life and the work that you're currently doing. I think that's one that comes back to me that I just think is so simple and easy, but so simple and easy not to do. And I think really kind of breaks it down quite nicely. The two people that I would now sit next to that actually wouldn't be my family. I find that question quite difficult.
Yeah.
I do very much enjoy Chris Williamson, just through the lens of how he communicates, how he can convey his message, and the way in which he thinks. I think is really, really cool. And I really like how he does that. I think that's really, really powerful. The second person that I would then say, I've said this in a podcast before, but one of the most profound, incredible, moving documentaries that I ever watched was Pink. And it was literally, I was like, she is a badass. And like when I watched her documentary like a couple of years ago, me and Leanne were both like, oh my God, like that, like just through that one program alone, that's a bit of an out there kind of uh, again,
Guilty
potentially
pleasure.
not a, like a not like a first, not maybe like a first pick that you would now maybe think, but I'm
Interesting.
just thinking something that really stands with me that I'm like, yeah, that was actually really cool, and I absolutely loved just the energy and the way in which they did things, and the like, just the mentality and how she approached everything in terms of her work, her family, her life. I just had the utmost amount of admiration and respect for her within that program that I watched, which I absolutely love. So completely like based upon that one program alone, um,
That's
they're the two they're the two people that I would have as a like a yeah an off the cuff
that's powerful.
um,
I really like that.
response. Who
Ed
would you have? Who
Sheeran
would you have?
in the two seats.
Yeah,
So there's someone I looked up to from an early age, Gerard Adams.
yeah, okay.
The reason why is because he told me a lot about family growing up, and I had like a very confusing relationship with family. And I remember he said something, it stuck with me for so long, and it's kind of been like the North and Star for me. It's like a man isn't a man unless he truly looks after the family and the people that love him and the people that are around him. So that for me can really show me the value of people around you. And I didn't see it back then because I was maybe the sole ranger and being by myself. So that's him because he instills a lot of values. Second one would be probably someone along the lines of, I think the second one's always hard. I think people always know the first one. The second one's like you need to think a little bit, but that comes top of mind. Um, I don't know. I don't want to say I don't know, but probably someone across the boards of like it's a hard one. It's hard between a few. So let's just say Ed Marlet's on the cards with that one because like he told me a lot about development. Dean Graziosi is really good. And Lewis Howes, I'd probably say that'd be that. So I'll give
Mate,
you those two.
I would have thought you would have already been prepared just in case.
Mosey and Layla.
No, just in case. I'm thought you. What book were you reading? What were you listening to?
Book would be the Do the Work by Stephen Pressfield, straight away.
Yeah.
That's a big one. And the album would probably be something along the lines of, that's a different one actually. Don't really listen to a lot of music. 50 Cent, play a lot, gives you a work ethic.
Yeah, mate.
Gives you a
Mate,
work
El
ethic. Yeah.
Classic. El Clasico, mate. That's it.
Yeah, that's the
Absolutely.
playlist that gets me working hard. I'll tell you that. So anytime I'm like, you need to get gritty, put it on, you work at that speed, and it's the way forward.
Yeah, mate. Fun fact. When I was about 10, I don't even know what I was in primary school. Was I in primary school or secondary school? Can't remember. Anyway, right, pretty much like probably between the two. There was a lad in our class that knew the entire album of 50 Cent off by heart, like
It's
every single song. So what I then decided, and I was like, mate, you're so cool. So what I then did was that I used to have like a bunk bed, and then there was like a shelf that had a CD player, and I then had the 50 Cent album. And then every single night when I went to bed, I would then listen to every single song on repeat until the point that I got to the level that I actually could then, I learned pretty much every single song
interesting.
off by heart. So I couldn't sing it now. I wouldn't have a clue. I couldn't even remember it. Maybe if it came on, I
That
probably
was
could.
good.
But I was like, but so it was actually then even for me, I look back now and I'm like, that's weird. Why did I, why did I do like, I was just like, and you just that repetitive over and over and over again just to then be able to do that. So, mate, I hear you in regards to 50 Cent because he had some absolute belters back
Yeah,
in the day.
100%. 100%.